Hey guys, tonight we journey into ancient Greece. Not the postcard version with statues and serenity, but the sticky, sun-drenched chaos of a Dionysian festival where the wine flows faster than gossip and sandals get stuck in the mud. You're shoulder to shoulder with 100 other revelers, the air thick with incense, sweat, and the pungent sweetness of overripe grapes. There's a man in a goat mask, screaming poetry to no one, a woman balancing a jug of wine on her head like it's a sacred rite, which it probably is. And somewhere off in the distance, the god Dionysus is allegedly present, though he's probably 3 amphorae deep and wearing someone else's robe. You, meanwhile, are trying not to step on anything squishy. It's wild, it's loud, and you probably won't survive this unless you've got a high tolerance for fermented chaos and barefoot philosophical debates. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my sleepy travelers are listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Eleutherae, just outside Athens. The hills are humming with lyres and laughter, and the ground is already a patchwork of trampled grape skins, discarded wreaths, and the occasional sandal abandoned mid-dance. It's the festival of Dionysus, and nobody's really clear if it's religious devotion or just an excellent excuse to shout lyrics at the moon. There's no stage, no seating, no order. People crowd around the central clearing where a makeshift altar has been hastily assembled, half shrine, half bar top. A chorus of robed performers has started chanting something vaguely poetic, but their words vanish into the cacophony of revelers laughing, hiccuping, and loudly comparing fig quality. You're standing, everyone's standing, for hours. The only person who seems remotely comfortable is that one guy lounging against a broken cartwheel, fanning himself with a fig leaf and pretending he understands the deeper symbolism of the play. And then from the chaos, you hear it, a voice that could part wine-dark seas. Dionysus, or at least the wildly perfumed actor playing him, has arrived. He's adorned with vines, purple robes, and confidence that cannot possibly be earned. He stumbles into the center of the crowd, lifts a cup with more flourish than coordination, and declares, "I want to see your beautiful faces, but my feet hurt." Everyone laughs, some nervously. You, maybe out of habit, start clapping, and then he does it. He scans the uneven, muddied terrain, spots a smooth boulder near the fig vendor's stall, and with divine drunken logic, climbs on top of it. "There," he proclaims, "now you can all gaze upon me properly." It's not clear if he means to be funny or if he's just tired of being jostled by worshippers. But either way, people love it. The crowd erupts in applause, or maybe it's just another spontaneous round of clapping at nothing. It's hard to tell with Dionysians. But something shifts. You see the way heads turn upward, how the voices hush for just a beat, how the physical act of rising above the crowd suddenly feels powerful, comfortable even, and practical. One guy near you mutters "smart" and starts looking around for a rock of his own. You glance behind you and notice someone trying to sit on an overturned basket. Someone else grabs a crate. There's a quiet ripple moving through the crowd, as if your collective unconscious just realized, wait, we don't have to stand. It doesn't take long before a few brave souls start staking out slightly elevated positions. Stumps, logs, anything that lifts them 6 inches higher and lets them see the chaotic theater below without someone's sweaty shoulder in the way. You try it too, perching on a chunk of rubble, and for the first time tonight, you can see the whole performance space. There's the chorus, still mostly ignored. There's the faux Dionysus, now reciting questionable poetry while drinking directly from a jug. There's even a goat nibbling a dropped sandal stage left. You exhale. It's better up here. Your legs agree, and just like that, the world changes. Not with a decree or a vote, but with one tired god standing on a rock because his feet hurt. Historians still argue whether this moment qualifies as the first real instance of audience seating. But here in the buzzing night air, it feels like something new has taken root. It's small, accidental, and almost laughably mundane. But sometimes revolutions are. The rest of the night blurs together. More songs, more strange dances, more wine than anyone can justify. But the image sticks with you. Dionysus high above the crowd, his voice carrying clearer, his presence undeniable. You leave the festival a little sunburned, slightly more fermented than recommended, and very, very intrigued by the power of elevation. Not metaphorical, literal, sitting on a rock, and you're not the only one. You wake up the next morning sprawled on someone's cloak, head buzzing, mouth dry, and knees absolutely furious with you. Your memories of last night are smeared around the edges, but the image of Dionysus standing on that rock is clear. The ache in your joints reminds you of the hours you spent standing, shifting from foot to foot, trying to see over the sea of flower-crowned heads. Apparently, your legs have filed a formal complaint. You're not alone, as the festival stretches into its second day. Because yes, in typical Dionysian fashion, it lasts for several. You notice a subtle shift in crowd behavior. People are scanning the area for anything that might serve as a seat. Even before the musicians tune their lyres or the dancers warm up their limbs, the crowd starts strategizing for comfort. You spot a man dragging over a flat stone with all the determination of someone who just invented furniture. Another person is hoisting a child onto an old cart for a better view. Someone even tied 2 wine jugs together as makeshift stools. It's absurd. It's genius. What was once a standing room only affair has become a tactical event. Early arrivers claim prime elevation, while the rest jostle politely for whatever slope, root, or elevated debris remains. You manage to snag a thick plank and balance it across a pair of stones. Voila, deluxe seating. You even catch someone eyeing it with envy. You smile like you've just outwitted the gods. And in a way, maybe you have. As the day progresses, your attention shifts from the performance to the audience. Not the stories, not the songs, but the choreography of how people are arranging themselves. Seating is becoming a thing, and it's changing everything. Before, people came and went from the center without fuss. But now, those who secure seats are reluctant to move. They've claimed space, they've claimed sightlines. Suddenly, the act of sitting has elevated them, socially and physically. You see arguments breaking out, not fistfights, well, okay, one goat-related scuffle, but passive-aggressive disputes over seat ownership. That was my rock. You left. I was relieving myself, not renouncing my seat. There are no rules, not yet. But humans, being the pattern-hungry beings they are starting to create them anyway. You overhear a heated conversation between 2 elders debating whether proximity to the altar or visibility of the main actor should determine where front row begins. One of them uses a stick to sketch concentric circles in the dirt, like some kind of primitive architectural blueprint. The other just steals his seat when he looks away. Somewhere in the background, a barefoot musician is tuning a lyre upside down. A drunk poet is reciting something about olives and existential dread. And yet, the real drama is unfolding in the audience. People are tired, people are innovative, and most of all, people are increasingly unwilling to stand in the dust for hours just to catch a glimpse of Dionysus's latest wine-soaked monologue. Historians still argue whether the invention of theater seating was a conscious design or a desperate workaround. But from where you're sitting, on your increasingly luxurious plank, it's obvious this wasn't just a comfort issue. It was a status shift, a spatial revelation, an aha moment born from sore thighs and grape stains. The next morning, word spreads. Eleutherae wasn't just a party, it was a breakthrough. Attendees start bragging about where they sat, as if that detail matters more than the actual performances. A man in the agora insists he had direct eye contact with Dionysus himself. Someone else claims she was elevated enough to hear the chorus's breath. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. Seating has become mythologized, and like all good myths, it starts repeating itself. When the next festival rolls around, people come prepared, not just with wine, but with portable seating, cloaks to spread on the ground, foldable stools made from olive wood. Someone even brings a set of stairs. You chuckle, watching the absurdity unfold, but deep down, you feel it too. The satisfaction of sitting, the way it lets you sink into the moment without distraction or leg cramps. There's a saying among the elders now, "He who sits well, sees well." It might have started as a joke, but it's beginning to sound suspiciously like wisdom. That night, the performance starts late because people are still shuffling for position. Dionysus, real or impersonated, takes his place on the same boulder as before. But now, no one laughs. It's expected, revered even. You lean back on your plank, legs stretched, hands folded, and wonder, How long until someone builds something permanent? The next time you attend the Dionysian festival, you arrive early, not for the libations, not even for the performers, but for the rocks. Specifically, the smooth, flattish one you spotted last year under the fig tree that offers a slight incline and partial shade. You remember it well. It was perfect. And this time, you're not leaving it to chance. But you're not the only one with a memory. A middle-aged woman in a saffron robe is already perched there, holding a cup of watered wine and looking smug. She nods at you knowingly, pats the rock beside her and says, "If you brought a cushion, I might let you stay." You didn't. Rookie mistake. By now, seating has become an art form and a subtle battleground. No official system exists, of course, but everyone pretends there's a code of honor. In reality, it's a lawless race of elbows, charm, and the occasional bread bribe. And that's when it happens. Mid-morning, as the sun reaches its most unflattering angle, Dionysus arrives. Not the actor this time, but the god himself, or at least the closest thing to him. A wild-eyed man with wreaths tangled in his beard, a purple robe 2 sizes too large, and a voice so loud it rattles the olives off nearby branches. He's clearly been sampling the ceremonial wine. He stumbles into the center, waves his arms, and bellows, "Why are you all so low? You look like mushrooms." A few chuckles ripple through the crowd. "Bring me a rock, a tall one," he demands, arms flailing like a particularly dramatic windmill. The crowd freezes, then scrambles. In a flurry of motion, several devout followers begin dragging over a nearby slab, originally part of a temple base, and hoist it upright. Dionysus climbs on, teeters, and shouts, "There, now I am among the stars." It's completely ridiculous, but also, somehow, majestic. And then, like a group of particularly eager theatergoers trying to impress a guest of honor, people begin mimicking him. One by one, folks begin selecting stones not just to sit, but to sit higher. Someone flips a crate upside down. Another balances on a root knot. 2 young men hoist a flat boulder together and argue over who gets the front edge. You watch, amused and a little awed, as the crowd unconsciously begins to form something resembling tiers. Elevation isn't just about comfort anymore. It's about proximity to divinity. You choose your spot, mid-tier, under partial shade, with a clear view of Dionysus and minimal goat interference. It's practically prime real estate. And here's the thing. The moment the crowd settles, everything feels better. The sound carries. The view is clear. There's less jostling, less wandering. The performers no longer have to shout themselves hoarse just to be noticed. And Dionysus? He's delighted. He thinks the whole thing is a tribute to his grandeur. He's not wrong. Just not entirely right either. Historians still argue whether Dionysus truly intended to revolutionize performance staging, or whether he was simply trying not to trip over his own robe. Some claim he was the original visionary, the god of not just theater, but theatrical design. Others believe it was the audience, desperate for a better view and a break from standing, who gave birth to the tiered system we know today. But one thing is certain, the act of climbing onto a rock to speak, and of others arranging themselves around it, has planted a seed. You watch as the performers pause to accommodate the new layout. They adjust their spacing. They turn, more deliberately now, to the outer edges. The choreography becomes conscious. Someone drops a line, and instead of chaos, there's a moment of stillness. Audience leaning forward, catching every word. And then, one man in the 3rd row of rocks, yes, there are rows now, raises his cup and says, "We should name these seats." Someone near him mutters, "Mine is called back pain." But the idea has been spoken. You look around at this impromptu structure of rocks, logs, crates, and woven mats and realize this is no longer a crowd. It's an amphitheater, a muddy, chaotic, make-do amphitheater, but one nonetheless. And even more strangely, it's working. The acoustics are clearer. The pacing of the play has adjusted to the layout. Even the goats are staying mostly on the outskirts, though one particularly theatrical one does insist on mimicking the chorus. You chuckle, imagining some future civilization carving perfect arcs into hillsides, measuring sound angles, designing formal seating. And all because a half-drunk god demanded a taller rock. That night, under a sky splashed with stars, Dionysus leans forward from his slab throne and shouts, "Do you love me?" The crowd erupts in cheer. Then sit down and listen. And so, you do. The morning sun casts long shadows over the now familiar hillside, and you're still chuckling to yourself about Dionysus' accidental commandment. Sit down and listen. What began as festival chaos has started to take shape. You don't realize it yet, but you've just witnessed the first unofficial prototype of a seated performance venue. Not because someone planned it, not because a decree came down from on high, but because a bunch of tired, wine-drunk people misinterpreted a theatrical tantrum as architectural inspiration. Classic humanity. By the next festival, word has spread. People now bring stones on purpose. Some are engraved. Some have little footrests chipped into them. There's even a man who paints his rock gold and declares himself Lord of the Mid-Tier. Nobody stops him, mostly because his wine is excellent. You see groups forming, families setting up seating circles, musicians carving out viewing lanes with rows of pebbles, children competing to build the tallest single-person perch. There's a new unspoken rule. Higher means better. No one says it out loud, but you can feel the ambition. Then someone drags in a wooden bench. It stops everything. You're mid-sip, mid-gossip, when this marvel arrives. 2 planks fastened together with pegs, slightly angled for comfort, just wide enough for 3 adults or 6 very enthusiastic philosophers. It's not beautiful, but it's deliberate, crafted. It doesn't wobble like a rock. It doesn't dig into your thighs. It's a revelation. The crowd stares like they've just seen fire for the first time, and it sparks something. The next day, more appear. Benches, stools, even a folding contraption made of animal hide stretched over a frame. Someone coins the term portable dignity, and honestly, it fits. Because once people experience seated elevation with back support, they are never going back. Dionysus returns again, sometime between the poetry and the goat dance, and this time he's impressed. "You've made a throne of the earth," he bellows, dramatically flopping onto the nearest bench like a theater kid in a toga. He throws a grape to the crowd and adds, "But only I get the center seat." Everyone laughs, but the pattern has locked in. You watch the audience morph into something new. It's not just a mass of spectators anymore. It's a system. People begin arranging themselves by preference, by status, by comfort. You overhear one woman boasting, "We sit 6 stones high." Very exclusive. Another whispers about the view from row 5, like it's a rooftop in Athens. And somewhere in all this confused hierarchy, a new ritual begins. People start dragging stones together, not just to sit higher, but to cluster, to organize. They begin building up, carefully stacking flat rocks into small step-like risers. No blueprint, no leader, just intuition. One group copies another, then another copies them. Soon, the hill resembles a layered fan of curved steps facing the stage. If you squint hard enough and ignore the goat nibbling someone's sandals, you could almost call it structured. Historians still argue whether this spontaneous stacking was inspired by geometry, laziness, or divine intervention. One fringe scholar even suggests early seating evolved because audiences wanted to be closer to the exit, classic Athenian efficiency. Another claims that goats, forever climbing, were the real architects, teaching humans how to tier themselves for maximum visibility and minimum chaos. Whatever the truth, the amphitheater has been born in spirit, if not yet in stone. But the misinterpretation continues. You overhear a group praising Dionysus for inventing the tiered layout himself, for ascending the rock of wisdom. A few claim it was his gift to mortals, comfort through order. One man even writes a poem about it, "The god who lifted man with stone, so art may find its sacred tone." It doesn't scan well, but people applaud anyway. Meanwhile, Dionysus seems oblivious, or maybe he's playing along. He now arrives at each festival with flair, demanding higher stages, longer intros, and more dramatic echoes. "Make my voice bounce off the hills," he commands, swaying slightly. You build a small riser for him using flattish slabs and bits of mortar someone traded from a nearby temple site. It's probably illegal. It's definitely effective. And when he climbs it and strikes a pose, the crowd gasps. Not because of the performance, he hasn't said a word yet, but because of the view. From your spot mid-tier, with your legs folded and your back supported by an actual cushion, thank you, Cousin Myron, you can see everything. The full orchestra of lyres and flutes, the dancers weaving their spirals, the flickering torches casting long shadows across the hillside. It feels orchestrated, designed, like a real performance space. And nobody planned it. Well, maybe one very drunk god did, but mostly, it's just people being tired, clever, and unwilling to stand in dirt any longer. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the voices wash over you. You're sitting, And the world has changed because of it. By now, seating has become the main event. Sure, people still come for the sacred plays and the overacted tragedies where gods cry about goats or whatever. But secretly, everyone's watching the audience. Who sits where? How high? How comfortably? It's become a spectator sport before the actual spectacle even begins. You arrive early again, of course. Not because you're obsessed, not because you've started naming your rock, Thronos Minoris, or brushing it clean with olive branches, just for the view. That's all, for the view. But the moment you crest the hill, your stomach drops. Your rock is gone. Well, not gone, relocated and stacked into a new, meticulously built three-tiered platform now housing a group of snooty men in bright cloaks. You freeze. One of them is holding a fan at a dirt-side theater. You walk closer, unsure if you should confront them or just weep in private. "Ah," says one of the cloaked figures, "you're admiring our innovation. We call it a spectator pad." You blink. "That's just a stack of rocks." He sniffs. "A curated stack." It's official. Theater seating has gone bougie. All around you, groups are arriving not just with stones or stools, but with elaborate pre-made platforms. One man rolls in an actual cart and flips it over to form a balcony. A baker's family brings loaves carved into seat shapes, edible seating which causes problems when a dog eats grandma's cushion mid-performance. A new word starts to circulate. Cathedra, literally, a seat with authority. People use it sarcastically at first, calling out, "Ooh, cathedra incoming," whenever someone brings something fancier than a stick to sit on. But then the word sticks, and somehow it becomes aspirational. And this is where things start to spiral. You notice the shift slowly at first. One festival has more built seating than the last. Then someone introduces proper stairs. Then someone paints numbered markers onto the stones. Someone else carves names. Suddenly, the seating isn't just a convenience. It's a statement. You're either seated well or you're not seated at all. Entire friend groups split over it. One man divorces his wife after she reserves them a downhill left spot instead of their usual center slope tier 2. Tragic, but understandable. And in the middle of it all, Dionysus, gloriously unaware, gloriously over the top. At this year's festival, he floats in on a litter carried by 4 nervous-looking carpenters. He's got golden sandals, grapes in his beard, and a scroll of poetry he never intends to read. He lands on a newly built dais, a cube of polished stone that gleams like a prize. He opens his arms. "Have I not made this a palace of vision?" The crowd roars. He thinks they're cheering for the poem. You, meanwhile, are sitting on what was once a storage lid for wine jugs, now expertly propped up with bricks and covered in fabric. The acoustics are better than ever. You can hear every overpronounced syllable, every fake cry, every stomped foot from the actors. It's magnificent. You glance around and realize that no one is standing. Not one person. Every body, from farmers to merchants to travelers from Delphi, is sitting. It's hard to describe what that means unless you've stood through 5 hours of goat-based lyrical tragedy while trying not to pass out from heat stroke. But now, the seated audience listens longer, responds more. They applaud in waves. They gasp at the right moments. They even whisper critiques between acts like connoisseurs. This wasn't just convenience anymore. It was culture. Historians still argue whether these early seating arrangements directly influenced the shape of later amphitheaters. Some say they were the foundation for stone theaters like the Theater of Dionysus in Athens. Others claim they were merely a phase, an accidental blip in festival evolution. A few radical theorists argue that seating emerged entirely separately, citing obscure Babylonian practices where people sat on jars and threw figs at actors, citation needed. But for you, sitting there, it's obvious. The seating is the show, or at least half of it. And you notice something else too. The elevation changes how people behave. Those seated higher start to act like they deserve it. They speak louder. They critique more confidently. A man in the top row calls down suggestions to the chorus like he's their artistic director. Someone below mutters, "Why don't you come down and act it yourself?" To which the man replies, "Because I have altitude." The audience laughs. It's becoming part of the entertainment. And so in a way, Dionysus did invent theater seating. He just thought he was inventing better monologues. By the time the 3rd year of structured chaos rolls around, you've accepted a hard truth. Showing up late to a Dionysian festival means sitting in the dust like a mortal failure. And mortals, as you've come to realize, have started taking festival logistics very, very seriously. You arrive at sunrise this time, like some sort of seating pilgrim, only to discover that others have beaten you to it. Entire family units are sprawled across blankets, children staking claims with decorative pebbles, and one man, definitely overcompensating, has set up a miniature tent complete with canopy shade and a woven floor mat. His seat is so high it requires a ladder. You wonder briefly if he's planning to watch the performance or announce a naval invasion. You wander the periphery looking for an unclaimed incline when something new catches your attention. The sound. It's clearer than ever. It shouldn't be, given the chaos. But it is. You take a step to the left. The sound drops slightly. You step to the right, halfway up a grassy bank, and suddenly the chorus reaches your ears in perfect harmony. The hill has become a natural amphitheater, and you're not the only one who notices. A nearby man with a scroll and suspiciously clean fingernails turns to you. "It's the slope," he says, like he invented geometry. "The incline captures the voices and carries them upward." You nod slowly. "So, like shouting into a bowl." He blinks, slightly offended. "Yes, well, a divine bowl." He jots something on his scroll and wanders off, probably to take credit for discovering acoustics. But he's not wrong. As the chorus sings and the actors stomp, the hillside seems to amplify their voices, not in volume, but in clarity. The wind catches just right. The stone risers, now worn smooth from so many seated backsides, don't block sound. They reflect it. The audience doesn't just hear the performance, they're wrapped in it. Somewhere nearby, a young boy tests the idea, whispering into a cracked amphora and hearing it echo faintly against the slope. His eyes go wide, and within minutes, he's charging up and down the hill, declaring he's found the talking ground. One performer even adjusts her pacing to fit the space. You recognize her, Callista, the one who always plays wronged goddesses and has a habit of turning every role into a dramatic scream fest. But today, she's subtle. Her voice rides the breeze instead of competing with it, and the crowd listens, quiet, reverent, seated. A woman near you murmurs, "I actually heard that line about fate this time." "Same," someone else whispers, "chills." You realize the festival is changing. The theater isn't just something that happens in front of the audience anymore. It's happening with them, shaped by where they sit, how they listen, how they respond. The hillside has become a collaborator, a stage partner, a kind of sacred architecture forged not by blueprints, but by feet and stones and too much wine. Historians still argue whether the use of natural slopes was a happy accident or a deliberate genius move. Some say the Greeks built theaters into hillsides to honor Gaia, the earth goddess. Others say it was simply easier than hauling stones to flat ground. And then there's the rogue theory that goats, again, inspired the design by always climbing up the best spots to listen. Whatever the reason, you can feel it in your bones. The earth is helping the performance. And with that realization comes a new social pattern. Those in the center of the slope claim better sound. Those to the sides argue for superior shade. One man swears by his wind pocket that carries the scent of roasted nuts directly to his seat. Another insists that being on the far right lets him see the chorus's feet better, which apparently matters to him deeply. Seating is now a science, a status symbol, and an emotional trigger. There are murmurs of formalizing it all. Some propose carving the slope permanently, making benches of stone to preserve the new structure. Others want assigned places, tickets, if you can imagine such a thing. Most just want to sit where they always do, even if that means arriving with the stars still out. But amid all this change, Dionysus remains, as ever, hilariously out of sync. At this year's grand entrance, he arrives in a cart pulled by 2 donkeys wearing wreaths. He's draped in gold fabric and yells, "Silence, mortals! I bring the gift of drama." The crowd laughs politely, already comfortably seated and fanning themselves with fig leaves. He stands on his usual elevated slab, though now it's surrounded by floral offerings and one very confused chicken, and gazes out. "I see we have built a temple to observation," he proclaims, raising his goblet. He probably thinks this is all about him. He's not wrong. But it's also about you, all of you, who refused to stand in the dust one more year and accidentally discovered spatial harmony. A breeze picks up. The actors begin again. Their voices ride the wind like songbirds. And you, seated at just the right slope, with just the right view, just the right distance from a goat nibbling someone's belt. Smile. Because now, this isn't just a hill, it's a theater. You don't expect the chorus to fall. Nobody does. But that's exactly what happens on the fourth day of the festival. Just as the sun crests the hills and the play enters its most somber act, a tragic retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice, only with more snakes and inexplicably, a camel. The chorus steps forward, robed in shadow-dyed linen, arms linked, faces solemn. They begin their chant, swaying gently like reeds in the breeze. It's mesmerizing, rhythmic. The audience falls into silence, leaning forward in their carefully stacked seats, and then someone steps too far. The edge of the makeshift stage, just packed dirt elevated with loose stones and some well-worn rugs, gives way with a muffled crunch. A half-dozen choristers stumble forward like dominoes. One catches their foot on a basket. Another topples into a goat, which bleats indignantly and takes off running through the front rows. There is a pause, a long, stunned pause, and then laughter. Rippling, roaring, contagious laughter. Even the stoic elders wheeze behind their cloaks. Dionysus, watching from his throne of wine crates, guffaws so hard he falls backward and knocks over a jug. Someone in the third row applauds. The rest follow. The play? Forgotten. The chorus? Covered in dirt and bruised egos. But the mood? Immaculate. Still, after the laughter fades and the rugs are straightened, a question emerges like steam from a bathhouse. Why is there no boundary? Not in a spiritual sense. In a literal, why did half the chorus almost get impaled by a cooking tripod sort of way? That night, over bread and wine, people start talking. The stage needs a line, someone says. A ledge, says another. A wall, offers a third. No walls, someone groans. We just got seating. Don't make it a fortress. But the idea sticks, not of a wall, but of zones, defined spaces. Places for performers, places for the audience, and places for goats to roam freely without interrupting monologues about tragic love and bad decisions. And so the next day, a few proactive citizens bring rope. Others bring sticks. One enthusiastic mason hauls in small stones and starts laying out a perimeter around the performance space. It's not much, a low line, a visual cue, but it works. For the first time, the actors have a clearly defined area to move within. The audience, seated in their rows of increasingly curated comfort, can focus. There's no threat of being trampled mid-scene, no anxiety about a dramatic turn suddenly involving a face full of sandal. You sit on your familiar incline, now 3 stones high with a reed mat overlay, very on trend this season, and marvel at how this chaotic wine-fueled festival is slowly becoming an art form. The plays run smoother, the chorus stays upright. The actors begin using the space more deliberately, pacing, gesturing, even pausing at the very edge of the rope for dramatic effect. You gasp, you cheer, you, frankly, feel cultured. Historians still argue whether this was the moment performance turned theatrical, whether this makeshift boundary marked the transition from ritual to art. Some say it was necessity, born from bruised knees. Others believe the rope was a symbol of sacred separation, the physical manifestation of the liminal space between story and audience. There's even a minority theory that the rope was originally brought to tie up a misbehaving donkey and that its theatrical application was an afterthought. Regardless, the effects are immediate. Soon, different zones begin to emerge. A flat space becomes the main stage. A slope to the left is dubbed the whisper bank, where actors murmur secrets. A small patch behind a tree becomes a hiding spot in plays, or a dramatic entrance zone depending on the script, or whether anyone remembers their lines. And you realize something subtle has happened. This isn't just people sitting around anymore. This is theater. Not just in content, but in structure, in design. And it all started with a chorus fall and a goat in a panic. You look around at the seating, the rows of sun-warmed stones, the makeshift cushions, the scattered benches and planks, and realize the audience is now part of the story. The shape of the seating influences the way the performance unfolds. The elevation determines who hears what first. The distance from the stage alters the emotional intensity. The top row chuckles a beat behind the front. The left side gasps before the right. Seating isn't passive, it's alive. At the end of the day, Dionysus raises a goblet and proclaims, "Tragedy is sweeter when you're not falling into the orchestra." And you can't help but agree. It was only a matter of time before the rich made it weird. You arrive at the next festival with your usual rock-top perch in mind, but something's off. The usual crush of early arrivers is there, yes, but so is something new. Fabric. Silk, linen, imported dyes, embroidered emblems, things that have no business being anywhere near amphora-strewn dirt paths or goat hooves. You pause at the edge of the hill, staring in mild horror. The entire upper tier has been transformed into a plush zone of status. Cushions, actual stitched cushions, not bundled cloaks, have been laid with obsessive precision. Some seats even have low wooden backrests, and in one especially obnoxious case, a parasol held aloft by a trembling servant. You hear someone behind you mutter, "Ah, the aristocrats have arrived." It's not bitter, it's worse, it's resigned. You make your way toward your spot, your usual spot, but it's been overtaken by a local magistrate and what appears to be a wine tasting club. They're speaking in carefully measured tones, using words like artistic curvature and sonic impact zones. You're fairly certain one of them brought a harp just to look interesting. So you find a new seat, lower, dustier, angled weirdly toward a fig tree. It's not bad, but you feel the change. You're no longer in the thick of it. You're looking up at the action instead of across. And worse, you're looking up at them. You notice something else too. The performers are adjusting. They tilt their bodies more toward the upper tiers. Their lines linger in that direction. The laughter starts high and rolls downward like a soft wave. The applause seems heavier from above. This wasn't just social hierarchy anymore. This was spatial hierarchy. The audience has stratified. Seating is no longer first come, first sit. It's curated, claimed, classed. Historians still debate when theater became political, but you're starting to suspect it was the moment someone brought a pillow and said, "No, this seat is for me." There's even talk of patron stones. Certain families now sit in the same spot every year, adorning their tiers with symbols or small carvings. You pass one that has a tiny dolphin etched into it. A child asks if it means Poseidon approves. His father corrects him. It means that's where the Thalassinos family sits. Try sitting there and see how quickly you get trampled. One man, notably not noble, tries anyway. He's bold, confident, and completely oblivious. He sets up on the second tier with an upcycled stool and a smug grin. Within minutes, he's diplomatically nudged, gently removed, and then shouted at by a woman holding a fan shaped like a peacock. He ends up sitting beside you, dusty and grumbling. "They said it wasn't personal," he mutters. "Was it the fan lady?" you ask. He nods. You share a handful of grapes in silence. But the tension grows. Whispers of unrest ripple through the crowd. Someone suggests drawing lots for seating. Another proposes that only citizens should be allowed on the upper tiers. A third says, "Let's just build more tiers," which causes the builders in the crowd to groan. And then the elite push it even further. At the next festival, they bring their own furniture. Small wooden thrones, decorated armrests. One particularly bold couple installs a chaise lounge and lays across it horizontally, like they're being painted by a Corinthian artist. You look at Dionysus for guidance. He's arrived again, fashionably late, barefoot, with a half-eaten pomegranate in one hand and an amphora in the other. He scans the audience, takes in the silks, the servants, the smugness. Then he blinks. "This is very organized," he says slowly, wobbling slightly. The crowd chuckles. He seems confused. "I remember when you all just stood in mud and shouted poetry at clouds," he adds, scratching his head. "We evolved," someone says from a very plush chair. Dionysus frowns. He holds up the amphora. "Did you evolve past this?" Silence. He drinks, then shrugs. You don't know if he approves or if he's just bored, but you do know one thing. Theater has changed. Maybe for the better. Maybe not. But it's changed. There's a hierarchy now, etched not in law, but in limestone and posture. And yet, the plays go on. Even as you sit slightly askew in your dusty little corner, you still laugh at the right moments. You still cry when Orpheus fails, again. You still feel your heart rise when the chorus sings, even if it's aimed 2 tiers above your head. Because theater lives, not in thrones or fans or even perfect sound angles, but in the stories you carry home in your bones. It begins, as all great disasters do, with goats. Specifically, a pair of them, unsupervised, determined, and with a taste for drama. They wander into the performance space just before the second act, hoofing their way up the wooden planks that had been hastily installed that morning. That's right, wooden bleachers. The natural slope, charming as it was, could no longer contain the ambitions of the elite. Someone, probably the same person who brought a harp last year, had decided to modernize the seating. Wooden structures now loomed above the earth, sectioned off with labels like Tier 1 Viewers and Echo Prime. You'd barely settled into your usual mid-slope spot when you noticed the beams creaking. "They say it's safe," someone whispered behind you. "They said that about the horse in Troy, too," another replied. But curiosity wins, as it always does. And by sunset, most of the upper tiers are filled with eager viewers perched on precariously elevated benches. The wooden seating looks impressive, regal even, until the goats arrive. They climb with the casual confidence of creatures that know exactly how structurally unsound something is. One leaps from tier to tier, prompting gasps. The other gets stuck, panics, and kicks a support beam. There's a long, agonizing crack, and then, blessedly, nothing happens. Everyone exhales. Until 5 minutes later, during a particularly rousing solo by an actor portraying a weeping titan, the structure shudders, groans, and partially collapses. The top row lurches forward like a wave. Cushions fly, wine spills, a harp plummets. The goats leap free, of course, unharmed and utterly unfazed. People shout, actors break character. One woman screams, "My cathedra," as her carved throne flips end over end into a pile of olives. Miraculously, no one dies. A few bruises, a bent nose, one spectacularly torn tunic. But the damage is not just physical, it's spiritual. Wooden seating, once seen as a mark of progress, is now suspect. You overhear someone muttering, "Stones don't fall, gods don't like lumber." Another whispers, "That's what we get for sitting higher than Dionysus." Historians still argue about the Great Collapse, whether it was a turning point, a temporary setback, or just the inevitable result of mixing goats with unreinforced scaffolding. But in the moment, the audience is left shaken, humbled, and oddly united. There's a peculiar camaraderie in the aftermath. You help someone gather spilled grapes. A merchant lends a cushion to a bruised philosopher. Even the snooty harp-bringer cracks a smile as he plucks a twangy apology from the only unbroken string. And somewhere near the front, Dionysus, sitting cross-legged on a flat rock, raises his hands and says, "Let the plays continue, but this time, maybe lower?" People laugh. The performance resumes, awkwardly at first, then with growing momentum. The chorus recovers, the goat is wrangled, and the show, in true Athenian fashion, must go on. In the days that follow, the mood shifts. Wooden risers are eyed with suspicion. People return to stone, to earth. They rearrange the hillside seating like puzzle pieces, with newfound care. Safe and sacred, someone says, keep patting a particularly sturdy slab. You return to your own spot, blessedly still intact, and feel something almost ancestral about the cold stone beneath you. It's unyielding, yes, but reliable. And in this chaotic world of collapsing bleachers and overconfident goats, reliable feels divine. Then something unexpected happens. The city steps in. Officials, wearing smug expressions and olive branch pins, announce plans for a permanent theater structure, one that blends the natural slope with architectural reinforcements. No more random piles of rubble. No more goat-accessible stilts. They bring out sketches, proudly displayed on wax tablets, semicircles, walkways, seating charts. This, they proclaim, is how Athens honors Dionysus, with safety, symmetry, and stone. The crowd cheers. Well, most of it. One man near you mutters, "They're formalizing the chaos. It'll never be the same." You sip your wine and shrug. Maybe he's right. Maybe something is lost when a festival born in disorder becomes municipal policy. But then again, maybe you're tired of playing seat roulette every year. Maybe it's time for something lasting. You look around. The packed earth, the carefully arranged stones, the flattened grass where someone's cushion was flung last night. And then you imagine it. Smooth arcs of carved marble, acoustics designed on purpose, no more goat drama. Well, hopefully. Maybe theater deserves a seat that doesn't fall. Maybe Dionysus does too. It starts with a man in a hat. Not just any hat. A wide-brimmed felt monstrosity adorned with peacock feathers and small bells. He claims to be an architect. Whether that's true or he just drank too much and wandered into the planning meeting is unclear, but he does one thing very well. Talk loudly while pointing at dirt. He stands on the hillside where generations have perched, throws his arms out dramatically, and declares, "We shall carve the very earth to match the voice of Dionysus." Someone claps. It might have been his mother, but he has scrolls, measurements, terms like radius and sound flow arcs that make people nod as if they understand. And more importantly, he has a commission, funded by Athens itself. You watch from the sidelines, eating an overripe fig as the process unfolds. First come the surveyors. They walk the hill like priests communing with a divine landscape, measuring shadows, yelling things like "Incline 5," and occasionally tripping over turtles. Then come the builders, pickaxes, chisels, sweat-stained tunics. They start at the base and work up, carving seats directly into the rock. And just like that, the seating becomes permanent. Your spot, once a 3-stone stack with a particularly smooth backrest, is now replaced by polished limestone, carved into perfect tiers. It's unnerving at first. You run your hand over the new surface, expecting it to wobble or splinter like the old wooden planks. But it doesn't. It's cool, solid, eternal. You sit, it's magnificent. The curvature hugs the stage below. The acoustics, enhanced by that ridiculous hat architect and his bell-laced gestures, are flawless. A whisper at the center carries like a rumor across a village. Even the birds seem impressed. And you're not the only one feeling it. The entire city is abuzz. Children climb the upper tiers for fun. Elders remark, now my spine doesn't scream by intermission." Merchants sell seat pads at the entrance. Overpriced, of course, but essential if you care about posterior dignity. And Dionysus? Oh, he's thriving. He arrives this time in a chariot shaped like a wine cup, drawn by 2 white oxen wearing velvet sashes. He steps into the theater, not onto a stage, but into the center of it, surrounded by the semicircular embrace of 5,000 seated admirers. He spins, arms raised, and yells, "Have I not inspired civilization?" The applause is thunderous. Historians still argue whether this is the birth of the theater of Dionysus as we know it, the one nestled into the southern slope of the Acropolis, the blueprint for all future Western stages. Some say this moment was mythologized later, retroactively credited to clever men in sandals with charcoaled floor plans. Others insist it was always meant to happen, that a god of chaos must eventually invent order, even if by mistake. But the result is undeniable. The theater is no longer a moment, it's a place. And with that place comes new traditions. A gate is added, then tickets. Not paper ones, tokens, clay discs with etched symbols denoting section and row. Your heart sinks the first time someone waves a token in your face and says, "That's my seat." It feels foreign, official, impersonal. Gone are the days of wrestling goats for space. Now, a man in a tunic and frown enforces assigned seating like he's guarding the Parthenon. You miss the mess, just a little. But you also don't miss the bruises, or the uncertainty, or the sheer luck required to hear the chorus at all. Now, you hear everything. You see everything. You are part of a machine designed to deliver art to the soul. The seats rise in perfect symmetry. The audience curves like a human wave. Even the actors seem reborn, projecting with new confidence, their words catching on stone and wind, carried effortlessly from God to mortal and back again. The goat incidents drop dramatically, except for one that refuses to leave and gets cast as forest creature number 3 in a tragedy. To this day, he gets applause. You start to see the ripple effect. Other cities copy the design. Wooden stages give way to stone. Hillsides become destinations. Architects go from eccentric to revered, and everywhere audiences sit. They sit and listen, and laugh, and cry. And it all began because a tired god climbed onto a rock and shouted for attention. That rock is now gone, folded into a marble stage, polished by sandals and time. But the spirit remains. So you sit, among thousands, wrapped in moonlight and myth, and you watch as art unfolds, designed not just to be told, but to be seen, and most importantly, to be seated for. You don't expect it to happen during intermission. You're halfway through a particularly heart-wrenching tragedy. Something about a fisherman who falls in love with the sea and accidentally marries a dolphin in disguise. When the actor playing the lead steps out from behind the painted backdrop, wipes his brow, and sits down. Not off stage, not hidden, but right there, on a rock. The audience gasps, a few murmur. One elderly man drops an olive. It's not the sitting that's strange. Everyone sits now. The gods themselves could barely get you to stand through a monologue. It's where he sits, on the edge of the orchestra, the sacred performance space, half facing the audience, legs crossed like he's about to start a fireside chat. And then he speaks, not as the character, as himself. "Good citizens," he begins, "let us pause for breath, not just ours, but the play's." You stare, half fascinated, half scandalized. The crowd is with you, frozen, unsure whether to throw figs or applaud. "I was thinking," he continues, gesturing lazily with a fig leaf prop. "Why must we always speak in unison, like birds rehearsing the same note? What if a man stood alone and told his truth?" And just like that, he shifts back into character and continues the monologue, alone. No chorus, no echoed repetition, just one man, on one rock, facing you directly. You can't breathe. You've never heard anything like it. It's raw, intimate. It slices through the grandeur like a knife through honey cake. You feel like he's speaking to you, not to the gods, not to the city, not to an abstract idea of the people. Just you. Historians still argue if this was truly the moment of Thespis, the first actor to step out of the chorus and become a character unto himself. Some claim it was a later innovation. Others say there were many firsts. But in that moment, sitting in your perfectly carved marble seat, one thought consumes you. Everything just changed. The audience, at first stunned into silence, erupts into applause before the final word. The actor bows awkwardly, clearly unprepared for this kind of reaction. It's no longer ritual, it's personal. Afterward, outside the theater, people argue. He broke the form, someone sneers. It was too honest. It was divine, another whispers. I saw my own grief in his. You don't speak. You're still processing, still staring at the place where he sat, that single rock just beyond the chorus circle, now etched into your memory forever. And you notice something else too. The audience begins to reshape. Not physically. They're still seated in the same semicircles, but mentally. The structure of how they listen, what they expect, how they react, shifts. Where once you were a collective, lulled by rhythm and repetition, now you are individuals. Each person responds differently, laughs at different lines, cries at different pauses, and the performers see it. The next play, two actors speaking to each other, alone, no chorus, no masks, no lyre accompaniment. It feels scandalous, it feels alive. And as you sit, knees tucked against the stone ledge in front of you, you realize the space, this perfectly designed theater, is evolving too. It's not just for performance anymore, it's for connection. Your seat is no longer just a view, it's a portal, from ancient myth to personal truth. You hear new phrases whispered as people file out that evening. Did you see the way he sat? I felt like I knew him. He looked mortal. You chuckle, because of course he did. He sat, like you. Like Dionysus did that first drunken night on a rock, a full circle, hidden in plain sight. That old deity, reclining as ever on a velvet cushion at stage right, seems almost amused by it all. He raises his cup and murmurs, "At last, someone gets it." There's something unsettling about a god who smiles when things get serious. You notice it during the next festival. An air of gravity hangs over the crowd. The plays are growing darker, the themes more piercing. No longer simple tales of hubris and harvest. Now they speak of betrayal, guilt, exile. You watch as even the rowdiest wine merchants go quiet when a mother on stage wails for her son, lost in war. But Dionysus? He grins. Not mockingly, not cruelly, but knowingly. As if to say, "Ah, you found the real nectar beneath the wine." It's unnerving, also strangely comforting, because now everything feels more intentional. The theater, once a hillside experiment of stacked rocks and noble cushions, has become an arena of the soul. The performers don't just entertain, they reveal. And the audience, you, don't just observe, you absorb. The actors walk differently now. They pause at specific angles, knowing the shape of the space carries their words like wind through reeds. They look up toward the marble tiers and speak as if your eyes hold the god's judgment. And the seating has adapted too. Lower tiers are now referred to as the heartbeat section, close enough to feel the dust kicked up by sandals, far enough to see full body emotion. Mid-tiers are the philosopher's perch, ideal for acoustics, shade, and smug commentary. The highest tiers? Reserved now. Not by law, by legacy. You learn the names, the Patroclus family, the House of Dionysus. Even out-of-town nobles now request seats by lineage or donation. A man from Corinth insists he can feel the performance better from Tier 7, center right, just beside the fig tree. You roll your eyes, but part of you wonders, could he be right? Because something odd is happening. People aren't just coming for the stories. They're coming for the seating experience. Architects begin drafting new ideas, adjusting angles, calculating optimal sightlines, testing echo patterns. There's even a whisper of a circular seating model where no one is in front, just around. One visionary proposes a rotating platform, quickly dismissed after someone asks, But what about the goats? Still, the spirit of innovation simmers. And then, without warning, it boils. One morning, you arrive to find small square markings etched into the marble of every seat. Symbols, letters, numbers. A stunned murmur rolls through the audience like thunder. They've numbered the seats. Not for vanity, for order. Each person is handed a clay token upon entry, a symbol and a tier. You trace yours, Delta 4. You wander through the grand stairways, yes, those are new too, until you find the matching mark carved just below a shallow groove shaped for a back. You sit. It fits. Perfectly. A strange hush settles over the crowd. There's no fighting, no bribing, no subtle shoving. Everyone finds their mark and lowers themselves in unison. It feels choreographed. It feels sacred. For the first time, the theater breathes as one. The performers step forward, the music begins, and you're ready. Historians still debate when assigned seating truly emerged. Was it a civic innovation? A control mechanism? A side effect of crowd management? One fringe theory argues that early seat numbering corresponded to zodiac alignments, placing melancholy Capricorns close to the tragedy zone and impulsive Leos near the exits. But whatever its origin, it sticks. Now every seat tells a story of who sat there, of what was seen, of what was felt. There's a boy beside you today, young, fidgety, bored. He kicks the marble under his feet. You consider glaring, but then he stops. The actor on stage, an older woman playing a fallen queen, lets out a line so sharp it slices through the space. The boy freezes, and you watch it happen, that moment, that change. His spine straightens, his eyes widen, and he is hooked. You smile. Because it's not just about the stage anymore. It's about where you are when the words hit you. And that boy, Delta 5, is never going to forget the first time he really sat, in a theater built not by gods, but by generations of aching backs and curious minds. The woman on stage bows, the crowd erupts. And Dionysus, perched atop his favorite stone throne with a fresh wreath of figs, raises his cup, not to the actors, not even to the playwright, to you, to the audience, to the seated soul. You never expected to see scaffolding in a theater, not the kind used for sets or stage effects, but actual stone scaffolding rising on the far left wing of the seating. At first, it looks like an accident, some leftover construction from the renovations that never stop. But then you see the robes, bright, expensive, and unmistakably smug. City officials. They're touring the site, pointing at things, making notes, debating loud enough for the actors to hear them backstage. One of them taps a spot on the marble and says, "This row could be expanded by 6 seats." Another adds, "Perhaps we raise it higher, better views for patrons." Patrons. It's the new word in everyone's mouth. Not citizens, not attendees. Patrons. Because seating now isn't just functional, it's capital. A merchant who owns olive groves buys out 5 seats and has his name carved into the backrest. To honor the arts, he says. More like to advertise during intermission. A politician commissions an entire box, a small raised platform with bronze railings and cushions that match the embroidery on his tunic. And yes, he insists it be referred to as the ambassador's nest. You wish you were making that up. And yet, people accept it, even admire it. A woman near you whispers, "Well, he did fund the new backstage storage," as if that justifies a personal canopy and footrest. You sit in your usual tier, now Delta 4 permanently, and notice something else. The air has changed, not literally. It still smells like olives, stone, and a hint of crushed thyme. But socially, it's thicker, warmer, stratified. People glance sideways as others walk in. They note robes, sandals, tokens, and worst of all, placement. You hear murmurs like, "She got upgraded, and he used to sit by the fig tree, now he's front center. Who did he bribe?" And then the scandal hits. A young playwright, brilliant, rising, painfully idealistic, is denied front row seating at his own premiere. The officials say it's due to space constraints. In reality, a patron bought out the first 3 rows for his extended family and their emotionally support tortoise. The playwright? He sits up in tier 6, cross-legged on bare stone, watching his own tragedy unfold from a distance. A few audience members spot him. There's a hush, a shame. Then, as the actors begin the opening lines, a ripple moves through the crowd. People rise, quietly, voluntarily. One by one, they offer up their seats. By the 3rd scene, the playwright is sitting in row 1, surrounded by strangers who simply stood up and stepped back. The patron in the ambassador's nest scowls, but does nothing. Dionysus watches from his usual slab, raising his cup with a smirk. And the play? It flourishes. A monologue about lost honor strikes harder than anyone expects. The chorus sings softer this time, less spectacle, more soul. Even the birds in the trees seem to hold their breath. Historians still argue about the seating rebellion of 437 BCE, if that was even the year. Some dismiss it as an urban legend. Others claim it was the spark that led to formalized civic seats, designated spots for artists, elders, veterans. A few even say Dionysus whispered the idea into someone's ear mid-applause. Whatever the truth, something shifts after that night. New tokens appear the next season, some marked with olive branches for civic guests, others with lyres for performers. Reserved, honored, protected. Seating isn't just about money anymore. It becomes a statement. Where you sit says who you are, what you value, what you're willing to give up, and what you refuse to yield. You begin to cherish your own seat even more, not for its view or status, but for its history. For the laughs you've shared there, the gasps, the tears. You run your fingers over the worn marble. There's a groove now, where your arm always rests. The sunlight catches it just right. A tiny indent in the vast story of this theater, carved by time, pressure, and repetition. You wonder, will someone sit here after you? Centuries later, will they know a person once leaned here and felt something? Will they feel it too? Because the seating, yes, even the politics, the bickering, the occasional tortoise has become part of the performance. A kind of silent drama, always unfolding, always evolving. And above it all, Dionysus drinks, grins, and says nothing. But you swear, just for a second, he winks. The sun sets a little slower these days, as if even Helios wants to catch the show. You arrive early enough to feel the dew still lifting from the marble steps, early enough to hear the chorus warming up behind the painted skein wall. The theater is quiet, not with emptiness, but with anticipation. You sit, same seat. Delta 4. The stone is familiar beneath you now, like an old friend. There's a new chip on the edge, probably from someone's amphora last week, but you don't mind. It adds character. Around you, the theater fills, row by row, section by section. The murmurs begin like a tide, soft, rising, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the occasional stern shush. Someone drops a token and it clinks down 5 levels before landing with a thud in someone's fig basket. But there's something different tonight. Not in the crowd, not really. The usual nobles, citizens, travelers. Even a few actors hiding among the audience in disguise, watching how their lines land when no one's expecting them to listen. No, the difference is in you. You're no longer just a spectator. You're part of it, part of the tradition, of the evolution, of the theater itself. Because you've watched it grow, from a drunken god's need to elevate his aching feet to a sacred architectural wonder that hosts tales which move hearts and change laws. You've seen stones stacked in desperation become steps of civic pride. You've seen goats interrupt monologues and politics interrupt seating charts. And through it all, the act of sitting, of gathering, of facing the stage together has become a ritual in its own right. Tonight, the play is a comedy. The kind where fishermen get turned into frogs and philosophers fall in love with lampstands. Not the deep, tragic kind that leaves your chest aching. But even so, when the flute begins and the curtain is pulled aside, the hush that falls over the crowd is complete. Because it doesn't matter what the story is, not really. It matters that you're here. Historians often credit great thinkers for Athenian democracy or generals for its expansion. But sitting there, surrounded by people from all walks of life, aligned in a perfect arc of attention, you realize something radical. Theater seating taught people how to listen, not just to actors, but to each other. It made space sacred, gave voices a home, trained thousands of bodies to be still so that one soul could speak and be heard by all. Even now, you watch the faces around you, tilted, quiet, eager. They're not thinking about their jobs or their debts, or even the pigeon currently trying to land on Dionysus' statue. They're present. And when the first actor steps forward and says, "Let me tell you a story," you feel the whole theater lean in together. And yet, for all the grandeur, for all the columns and tokens and assigned rows, some things haven't changed. Someone still brought a goat. It's chewing on a sandal. Someone else forgot their cushion and is sitting on a folded tunic with the defeated expression of a man who knows this will be a 3-hour show. And Dionysus? He's there too. A little older, perhaps. Or maybe just a little quieter. He sits cross-legged on his slab. Not a throne anymore, just a flat stone he likes, and watches the crowd, not the stage. He sees you glance at him, lifts his cup, and gives you the smallest nod, as if to say, "You built this. All of you. Every stone, every seat, every silence between words." The actor on stage trips slightly on his first line. The audience chuckles softly. You don't mind. The light fades gently. The breeze cools the marble beneath your legs. And you sit back, spine against stone, heart open, knowing that somewhere deep in the design of this place, your seat matters. Not because it's fancy, not because it's front row, but because it's yours. The years pass. You return, again and again. The festival changes, sometimes subtly, sometimes with a thunderclap. New playwrights rise, old forms fall. Masks become more elaborate, then simpler, then painted with expressions so tender it feels as if the stone beneath your seat might weep with you. But the seating remains, not unchanged, but ever adapting. Now, as you step into the theater, you notice plaques at the entryway, names, generations. Tokens have become more intricate, clay replaced with etched bronze, inscribed with emblems of Dionysus entwined in vines. The ushers wear matching robes. It's all so refined. And yet, as you climb the familiar steps to Delta 4, your seat still welcomes you like a worn sandal. It creaks slightly under you now, though it's made of stone. It's your knees. But you laugh at the sound. It reminds you how long you've been part of this. A child now sits in Delta 5. Not the same child from years ago, but someone else, wide-eyed, legs swinging, still unsure if this is a place for joy or boredom. He sneaks glances at your face, trying to gauge how to behave. You smile. The performance tonight is a new play, a satire about gods arguing over soup. It's silly, sharp, and weirdly poignant. You laugh more than you expect. At one point, the actor playing Hermes delivers a line so fast and absurd that you lean back, hand on your chest, tears in your eyes. And that's when it hits you. You've been here for the beginning of everything. You were there when Dionysus demanded a rock, when people copied him, dragging stones toward the stage like ants moving pebbles, when someone tripped in the chorus and changed the rules, when cushions became class, when the city poured marble into the hillside like honey into a mold. You've sat beside poets, merchants, children, philosophers, nobles, and once, very briefly, a confused piglet. You've watched new seating rise and fall, sometimes literally, and still, always, you came back. Because theater isn't just what happens on stage, it's what happens around it. You, the listener, the leaner, the gasper, the weeper, the applauder. Your presence shapes the space as much as the stones. Historians will debate it forever. Who built the first seat? Who drew the first arc? Who counted sound echoes and aligned stones to optimize tears? They'll credit architects, rulers, patrons, but they'll miss the heart of it. You, the seated human, the mortal who came to hear the divine. And in that moment, as the play ends and the crowd rises, some stretching, some still laughing, some already reaching for their sandals, you linger. You look once more at your seat, at the gentle groove worn into its edge. You place your hand there, warm against cold, and whisper, "Thank you." Wind words. Now, as the crowd filters out and the torches are lowered, the theater exhales. The marble cools beneath the stars. The hush settles over the rows like a blanket, and all that remains are echoes, faint laughter, forgotten lines, the soft scuff of sandals on stone. You sit a little longer, your body heavy, but your mind soft. Above you, the sky stretches wide, painted with constellations the actors once named mid-scene. The breeze stirs faintly, cool against your face, and the scent of crushed thyme and distant wine lingers on the air. And though the stage is empty now, the theater is not. Your heartbeat slows. You can almost hear the chorus still humming behind the skein. Feel Dionysus reclining somewhere just out of view, watching, sipping, smiling. The stones beneath you have carried centuries. They will carry centuries more. You close your eyes, breathe deep, and know that no matter what plays come and go, no matter what actors rise or cities fall, the seat will remain, waiting, holding space, a home for the human soul that dares to sit still and listen. So rest easy now. You've been part of something beautiful, and it's been part of you. Good night, traveler. Sweet dreams.